We're on step 70, and we're now going to remove the 4 elvon locks, and those are those 4 pieces here, and they're going to be glued to the top of the transition. I want to glue this up, and then after I get it glued, this part is ready to paint. This part I'm going to paint white. This part I've already painted green. It's going to be really hard to mask after they're glued together, so I want to paint it first before I glue it together. So, where's my knife? Remove these. And then I'm going to take some sandpaper and just sand off those little sprues and kind of roughen up the bottom. And if you look closely at these elvon locks, one side has a little hole, which is this size. It's a little indentation. The other side does not. So I'm going to glue mine where that little hole is facing outwards from the rocket. And I'll just put a little dot on each of these little pads. Okay, so once that is hardened, I can go ahead and paint this part up. Just be careful on that inside edge here, because that's where the glue is going to go. And like we always try to avoid putting glue and paint together. So I want to keep that. I may mask off the inside just a little bit just to keep that paint from getting there. So that's the inner stage piece. And then once it's painted up in step 72, we're actually going to glue it onto the bottom part of this. So I'll see you then. Okay, I'm back at step 70, which is to glue the transition onto the bottom part of the transition. I have painted my transition now, so it's now at a good point where I can glue it on. So in step 70, what we want to do is to take the bottom part of the transition and the one that has the shock cord in it. Look down in your tubes, find the one that has the shock cord in this one, which for me is this, and then that's going to go on here like this. And then rotate it around, find your rail button right here. This is where the rail button is going to be installed. And then on my transition, so here is my rail button here. So you got to align those two together, and that's where it's going to be glued on like that. I had previously masked that off, and I masked off around here, so I'm getting plastic on plastic. And then I'll glue them together. So I'm just going to go around the perimeter with some medium thick super glue. And I want to put it on this side, because if I put it on this side, all the glue is going to ooze out, and it's going to be on the outside of the rocket, and I want to keep it on the inside. Again, final check. Rail button, rail button. There we go. All right, well, just let that dry, and we're going to move on to the next step. Okay, we're on step 73, and we need to remove R1 and also R2. So R1 is from the 1/16 inch plywood sheet, and it's this piece right here. And then R2 is this one right here from the 1/8 inch piece. So we'll go ahead and pop those out with a hobby knife. Also remove these center circles. Okay, and these are going to be glued together using CA glue. You can also use wood glue, it doesn't really matter. Just going to be stacked on top of each other like that and glued in place. This is going to be the motor retainer for the booster stage. So I'm just going to smear glue on this. And you notice there's wood grain. So crisscross the wood grain. So they're both running this way right now. So I'm going to spin it. So one's going this way, one's going that way. I'm not too concerned about any glue oozing in the holes. I'm just about this edge here because this is going to go over the lip of the rocket motor to hold it in. So go ahead and just set this aside and let it dry, and we will move on to step 74. So 74 is we're going to take the alignment guide, which is this piece right here, and we're going to remove these two pieces off the edge. We want to use this one. And we'll also remove this piece out of the middle. We're going to take our booster stage and the 4 fins, and we're going to dry fit them into the slots. Mine are loose. I'm going to take a pencil and I'm going to mark each one. So this is going to be number 1, and this will be my slot number 1. I'll put that one in there, and then we're going to stick these in the slots on the template. I'm going to make sure that they all fit. We're kind of pressing hard into these slots here. This will be number 2. This will be number 3. I can draw a 3 upside down. It's probably upside down. And this will be number 4. Just like that. Okay, so now we're going to take a pencil and we're going to draw around the perimeter of the fin on the body tube, especially if you've painted it already. If you haven't painted it, you don't need to do this, because what we're going to do is put masking tape, because when we bond these on, any glue that oozes out, we don't want to get onto the paint. All right, also in step 75 is now we're going to take this apart. We're going to mask it off with tape. And this is only temporary. We're going to pull this off after we've glued it on. But this is to prevent any glue from getting onto our paint that we've just put on. So I'm going to go ahead and mask this off. And then the next step in 76 is to epoxy these fins in. So I'll also start mixing up some epoxy and get that ready for step 76. Okay, I'm on step 76 here. Now I've got my epoxy mixed up. And now we're going to bond in the fins. And so I'm just going to butter them up on the bottom. I'm just going to set them. I'm going to do them all at once. This is why we numbered them before, just in case that they don't have the same pattern on the tape. So here's number 1. This is number 2. There we go. Okay. So they're nice and wedged in there. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my excess epoxy, I'm going to put a blob right there, because we need to find out when it's getting hard but not so hard, because we need to remove the tape, and we need to remove the tape while the epoxy is still in the green state, where it's semi-hard but not rock hard yet. Also at this point, we're going to take a cotton swab and we're going to look where the fin meets the tube, and we're going to wipe off any excess epoxy. Alcohol works really good at taking up excess epoxy. So I'm concentrating on the upper part. That one doesn't have tape on it. It's a good thing I don't have any epoxy oozing out. This one has a little bit oozing out. So this is 15-minute epoxy, so I expect in about 10 minutes it'll be kind of harder, and I'm going to use that little spill or a little blob to test it. You know, you can put your finger in it, and you know, if you're pulling some off, it's like not in its green state. So just kind of watch that. We're going to babysit that for a little bit, just until that epoxy is hard. Also make sure that the fins, are flush up against the tubes, because that's going to make them as strong as possible. So if you have to hold them, you might have to hold them. It won't be forever. It'll probably be less than 15 minutes. So do this step while watching a video. Maybe watching the further videos in the construction of the Nike Hercules. Okay, we're on step 79, and says, using a sharp hobby knife, cut out the booster fin flange components. That's these. That's from part number 40090. There's 2 of these sheets. You're only going to need 1 set, so you can keep the other one as a spare. So we need to cut these out in 79. The first thing I'm going to do is I'm just going to separate them. That just makes it easier to work with. Like before, we're just going to cut these out, and it's going to take a little bit of time. So let me go ahead and start the process. Now we're on step 80, and we're going to glue all these pieces together. And there's 8 pieces. One of them has printing on it, the other one does not. We're going to stack them up and glue them together. I like to use thinned out wood glue for this, so I'm just going to put some wood glue in there. When you do them all, just add a drop of water. Too much. I'm going to take a Q-tip, just mix it all together. Just want a thin layer of glue on here. And then take this piece. Okay, and then we're going to glue these together. And then we're going to let these dry. And so there's 8 of them, 2 for each fin. So go ahead and do all that. And now we're on step 81. Through the magic of film, I've got a whole bunch of them that are already dry. What we're going to do is, as before, these are going to be folded, and they're going to be folded along the solid lines right there. So you need to score it, and the instructions say to use a thin rounded dowel or knitting needle along with a straight edge. Mark and fold the lines as required. You're going to do this. I'm going to use a dull knife, or if you got a sharp knife, be very gentle. And on these, I'm actually going to do the backside too. So the line is kind of like right here at the tip, like that. So then we're able to fold it this way, and these, we're going to fold them up like that. In step 82, before you do all your folding, step 82 is check the edges, make sure that the edges are even. So you want to go ahead and take some sandpaper, just sand around the edges, make them look pretty. Okay, in step 83, we had cut and folded the flanges. In step 84, they are glued to the rocket. So I've already painted them, and I painted the rocket. Because the masking around here is pretty difficult, I decided to paint them off the rocket, and then I'll attach them on the rocket like this. And so to do this, I'm just going to take some medium CA. I'm just going to apply it to the back. And hopefully you can see this. Okay, so that's glued in place. I'm gonna get the right ones. Okay, so this one will go here. Just like that. And there's 8 of them, so I'm gonna go ahead and put all 8 on. And as you can see, I'm pretty well along on the booster stage. It's just a matter of finishing up the upper stage. Just like that. So that is step 84, and then 85 is the installation of the Nike booster is complete, and it's ready for the installation of the recovery system, but we'll do the recovery system later. So next, after this, we're going to start the construction of the Hercules, which is the upper stage of the rocket. So we'll see you then.